Hello and welcome back to part 2 of the top MMA prospects to watch out for in 2020. In this part we will be looking at welterweight, middleweight, light heavyweight, heavyweight and the three women's divisions, strawweight, flyweight and bantamweight. Okay, so first we have welterweight, and up first we have Jeff Neal. He is 13-2 in MMA, he is 5-0 in the UFC, and he has already beaten the likes of Bilal Muhammad, Nico Price and Mike Perry, and he's finished 4 of his 5 UFC wins. He is a phenomenal fighter, and sooner rather than later he will be looking at the top of the welterweight division. Next up we have Sean Brady. Now Sean Brady is 12-0, he's unbeaten in MMA, and he's 2-0 in the UFC. He is in his 2 UFC fights he beat Court McGee, a very experienced fighter, and Ismail Nardiev. Now Ismail Nardiev is known as the Austrian Wonderboy. He is a fantastic young fighter, and for Sean it was a very tough fight. He got pieced up on the feet in the first round very badly, and then he kind of realised that he had the grappling advantage over Nardiev, so he just grinded him out for the next 2 rounds and won a comfortable decision. He's only 26 years old, and he again looks very good, especially already beating 2 good fighters in his first 2 UFC fights. Okay, so that's the welterweight ones. Now we'll move on to middleweight. Up first we have Rodolfo Vieira. Now Rodolfo is one of the best Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioners in the world. He's a 4-time Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu world champion. In his BJJ matches he has 100 wins, 9 losses and 1 draw in pro competitive Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He won a gold in under 99 kg in the ADCCs in 2015, and he's only 30 years old. He already has 7 MMA fights, 7-0, and he's 2-0 in the UFC. He won his last one against Saparbek Safarov and just tapped him out in the first round with an arm triangle, I believe it was. He obviously just one of them guys that he'll be able to beat most people when it comes to groundwork. It's just on the feet, if he can hang with them on the feet. If he does work on his striking a lot and get very good, he's only 30 again, he has huge potential. He just needs to fight a lot, and hopefully he'll be able to see his potential. Then we have Brendan All-In Allen. Brendan Allen is out of Rufus-Sport in Milwaukee. He's 14-3 in MMA. He's 2-0 in the UFC, so he has 17 pro MMA fights. He's very experienced for a man who's only 24 years of age. He's beaten Kevin Holland and Tom Breeze in his 2 UFC fights. 2 brilliant fighters. I really like Tom Breeze, so beating Tom Breeze is very impressive in my eyes. Now, Tom Breeze was after a long layover, so that may have brought into it, but still take nothing away from Brendan. He looked fantastic in that fight. He's a great grappler and had 17 pro fights at only the age of 24 and training with Duke Rufus. This guy could very well be the limit for Brendan Allen, and he has very tough training partners. So if he can get maybe a top 15 guy in his next fight, beat them, then you never know what could be next for him after that. Then we move on to the light heavyweight division, where we have Jimmy Crute. Now Jimmy Crute is 11-1. He's 3-1 in the UFC. He's a great striker. His one loss was to Misha Serkinov, where he got beat on the ground. He won his first 2 fights impressively on the feet. Then he lost to Misha Serkinov. Then in the last fight against Michael Olachechuk, he showed a great improvement in his grappling. He took him down no problem and just dominated him on the ground. He's 11-1, so again he has his first loss, which it looks like he has learned from, which for a lot of people is very important. And again, he's only 24. He's a big, strong man, so as long as he keeps getting good fights, getting fights that don't push him too soon, because he's only 24, he just needs to be brought up in the right way, then he could be, and especially in a division where it only takes 3 or 4 wins and you're up there for a title shot, like the light heavyweight division, especially with what's going on with John Jones now. And is he going to go up to heavyweight? Who actually knows? So you never know what will happen with Jimmy Crute. Then we have Ryan Superman Spann. So Ryan Spann is 17-5 in MMA. He's 3-0 in the UFC. He's won his 3 fights by decision, submission and a knockout with an uppercut. So he's shown that he can win any way possible. He's a tall light heavyweight, 6'5", and he's only 28 years of age. So again, with the light heavyweight division, there's not loads of people that stick out and you can say, oh, that's a top prospect or that's a top prospect. But after 2, 3, 4 wins, they could be just thrust into a title shot. Like, look at Thiago Santos and Anthony Smith, Dominic Reyes, Volkan Ozdemir when he first fought DC. It only takes 3 or 4 good wins with a couple finishes and you're already up there for a title shot. So with either of them 2, 3 more wins, they could be looking at a top 5 or even a title shot depending on what happens with John Jones. Then we move on to the heavyweight division. Up first we have Tom Aspinall. Now Tom Aspinall he's yet to fight in the UFC. He was meant to fight Rafael Pessoa at UFC London, but obviously the coronavirus stopped that. He's from Liverpool. He trained with Darren Till. He's 7-2 in pro MMA. He used to box with Tyson Fury, and watching some of his Cage Warriors fights, he is a fantastic boxer. Now with the heavyweight division, you can get away with having good wrestling and being a boxer. Like, look at Derek Lewis, look at Francis Ngannou. They're great boxers who don't have an extensive ground game or extensive grappling game. You just have to use it the right way, because your power most likely will translate to the later rounds if it does go that far. So build him up the right way, especially with the fact that he's trained with Darren Till. That might make the UFC think that there might be a good marketing push with him, so they might take their time with him. Then next up we have Cyril Gane. Now Cyril Gane is 6-0 in MMA. He's 3-0 in the UFC. He has 2 of his wins by submission. He's only a pro fighter 18 months and he is 6-0 already. He trains in Paris, France with Francis Ngannou's coach now. I've seen an interview, they haven't actually trained with each other yet, because Ngannou does a lot of his camps in Vegas. But even that, they've still recognised that and they've still tried to push that. So that is an interesting storyline to look at, and one that the UFC would use to try and build both him and Ngannou up even more. But with them, heavyweight again, 3, 4, 5 wins with a couple knockouts or a couple submissions, and you could be looking at a title shot straight away. Especially with the fact that Stipe still has to fight Daniel Cormier, and if Cormier wins, then the belt is vacant. And the only other person up there blatantly deserved to have a title shot is Francis Ngannou and Curtis Blades. So another couple of wins, and anybody could go straight to the top of that division. Next up we have the women's strawweight division. So I picked Angela Hill. She's 12-7 in MMA. She's 7-7 in the UFC, so not a great record. But she's on a 3-fight win streak. She fights all the time. Every few months you see her fighting. And she's only been training in MMA only a few years. Only in her, I think it was her 3rd pro fight, she said on Joe Rogan's that she actually started training MMA just before that. So she's only really new to the sport. She hasn't done any combat sports till she was 24. She's 34 now. So her body clock is still young. She's taken really no damage. She's a great Muay Thai fighter. She started off in Muay Thai. She's done training in Thailand. But the more that she does fight, the more she'll just get used to it. And she looked very impressive in her last few fights. So she is one that, although she's 7-7 in the UFC in both of her stints, she is someone that you would have to look out for. And then we have Amanda Rivas. Now Amanda Rivas has already beaten Mackenzie Dern, who the UFC were trying to push. She's 9-1 in MMA and she's 3-0 in the UFC. Her only pro loss was outside the UFC to Polyana Viana, who is a former UFC fighter. So you always kind of leave that slide a little bit if they're only pro loss, or like you don't knock them down on it, because it's still technically a UFC fighter that they lost to, but it was outside of the UFC. Amanda's a great fighter. She looked very good there in her last fight. Both of these, now strawweight is very stacked. You have a lot of great fighters, so they have to put in a lot of work if they are to be at the top of the division. But in 3, 4, 5 fights, they could definitely be looking at getting towards the top 5. especially with how often that Angela Hill wants to fight. That could be in the next 12 or 18 months again. She could be looking at top 5. Then we have flyweight. We have Ariana Lipski, who was 12-5 in MMA. She's 1-2 in her in the UFC. Now she won her last fight. She looked very impressive in it, and her 2 losses were to Molly McCann and Joanne Calderwood. Now Joanne Calderwood is fighting next for a title, so that's not bad. And Molly McCann is the other person I have on this list. She's a great fighter. I've watched her on Cage Warriors and now in the UFC. She's just a scrapper. She just goes out and scraps, and she'll do anything to get a win. So losing to them is nothing to be looked down on. She's a former KSW champion. Now KSW do put on great shows and they have loads of great fighters. So to be in the UFC and a former KSW champion, then you must have something good about you. And she is only 26 years of age. So in the next 2 or 3 years, the sky's the limit. She won't even be 30 in 3 years' time. And if you're on the other side of 30, you still have plenty of years to go. Then, as I said, Molly McCann is next. She's 10-2 in MMA, 3-1 in the UFC. She bet Lipski in a great fight. She lost her UFC debut against Gillian Robertson, and she's a former Cage Warriors champion now again, Molly. As I said, she's a scrapper. She'll just go out and she'll just scrap. She's a heart of a lion. You can see that in her fight against Priscilla Cachoeira, where she just got damaged and just ended up just winning. It's very hard to beat her. So to try and stop her being a UFC champion, you'll have to do very good. Then we have bantamweight. Now bantamweight, to be honest, was difficult enough. There's not a whole lot of people outside the top 10 range that you could look at. So I picked Tracy Cortez, who's 1-0 in the UFC. She's 7-1 in MMA. Her only loss was her pro debut in 2017. She's 26 years old. She won on the Contender Series as well. She has a very inspiring story about her brother's dreams to be in the UFC, and then unfortunately he passed away, and now she is in the UFC fighting for his legacy and fighting for her legacy. So the UFC will try and push that, I would think, and she is still a great fighter. Don't get me wrong, she's still a great fighter, and especially only being 26, there's loads of time for her to grow, there's loads of time for her to push on and get even better than she is now. Then we have Bia Malecki, who was 4-0 in MMA. She's 2-0 in the UFC. She won her last fight at the UFC Brasilia, the last UFC event as of this recording. She trains at Fortis MMA under Saif Sayoud. Anyone who trains under Saif Sayoud, he's like Jess Neal, he trains there as well. Saif Sayoud is a fantastic coach. There's not any UFC fighters that are at the gym that you'd look at and just go, ooh, they're not fantastic. So to be in that gym and to be in the UFC speaks volumes for who you are as a fighter. And she is still a great fighter. She could have put on a bit more pressure in her last fight. She didn't look amazing in the first round. She looked very poor, but then again, Saif Sayoud couldn't go over there because of the virus issues. She only actually had one corner woman. So that may have played into it, and the fact there was no crowd, there could have been loads of issues. But she has loads of time to improve, especially that she's only 4-0. You can't really expect too much from her yet, so I expect her to push on and push for top 5 title fight in the next probably 3 or 4 years. So these are all the list of the fighters ranking from flyweight to women's bantamweight, 2-part series, who I think they're outside of the top 10, and I think that in the coming years they could push on for top 5 or title fights in their respective divisions. So that was the whole list. Thank you all very much for watching it. Hope you enjoyed it.